Hello, my name is Nick Borson, and this is the fourth in a series of videos about learning to program using PowerShell. So these videos are aimed at new or non-programmers who want to learn how to code, and they kind of build on each other. So if you haven't watched the previous episodes, you might want to go back and start at the beginning. I'll include a link to the playlist in the description. So in the last video, we wrote our first PowerShell script. We used Visual Studio Code to create a text file that contained our PowerShell commands, and we executed that file. So I'm going to go, I have a PowerShell window open here now, and I'm going to, by default it opens in the top level directory for my profile, my user profile. I'm going to change into the directory that I created to hold my PowerShell scripts. I'm going to cd, change to chdir, either one of those, learn ps. That's the directory name I created. I hit tab to autocomplete that, hit enter. Now I'm in that directory. If I type ls to list the files in this directory, I see that we have this file called first script. And I'm going to type code dot to open the current folder. Dot refers to the current folder in Visual Studio Code. And when it opens, I can see that in the window on the left, we have the files that are in the current directory, and first script is the only file. And this is the script we wrote last time. So let's just review this a little bit, because in this video, we're going to improve on this script. We're going to learn a few new things. So we're going to learn about parameters, how to define parameters for a script. And we're also going to learn about conditional statements and about functions. So in this script, we started out by reading a string from the user. We prompted the user for the string. We told the user enter your age and read back a string that we stored in the age variable. Then we got the current year. We used the getDate commandlet, which returned a datetime object. We used its accessed its year property, and we stored that in the current year. And then we just hard-coded this number 2000 as our target year. And what we're trying to do is calculate, given the user's current age, how old were they in 2000? So we did this calculation, and then we wrote the message out to the output. On this day in the target year, you were this computed age old. So let's run this again. Just to review, so I'll say first and hit tab to complete. And it asks me enter your age. So this is executing that read host command. And I'll say I'm 50. And then it says on this day in 2000 you were 29 years old. Okay, so that works fine. One thing we did discover last time, though, was if I type something that's nonsensical or not a number, like ZZZ, then it's going to complain because it can't convert the value ZZZ to a system int32, an integer, and wasn't in the correct format. So our script is not perfect. It does work as long as you enter an integer, but we can find ways to make it better. So one way we can make it better, before we even go any further, is we can maybe give it a name that is more describing what it does. So I'll just call it getTargetAge. So I'll keep our first script the way it is, but I'm going to copy it to a new file. Say copy first tab, and I'll give it the new name get-targetAge. And again, we have to have the PS1 extension. That's what identifies the script as a PowerShell script. So PowerShell commands, by convention, they all have this kind of form. They start with a verb, a hyphen, and then some sort of noun phrase that describes what it is that the verb is doing. And so a common one is get. So read is another one. For example, read host, read a string from the host or from the user. Get target age will give us the target age, the user's age as of some target year, given when the user supplies their age. So let's go ahead and open our new script. And what we want is to have a way of supplying the two values that we care about. We have the target year value and we have the current age value. And in our first script, we got the age by reading a value explicitly from the user. There's actually a simpler way to do it, and that is by declaring a script parameter. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to type param. At the top of the script, I'll declare a param block. So this declares the parameters that the script has, and I can just type current age and target. And we can be a little more precise than this, but we'll start out simple here. So now we don't have to we don't have to have a read host command. We'll just have our current age, and we had to get the current year because we're going to compute a distance back in time from the current year. Target year, or target year is the question we have. We're no longer hard coding target year, we're making that a parameter. And then our target age is the current age minus the current year minus the target year. We can maybe make this a little bit more clear by saying how long ago was the target year. Difference equals this calculation here. Oops. Oh, come on. Well, all right, I'll just say current year minus target year. So I'm breaking this into two steps just because it might make it a little easier to understand. So the age as of the target year then is simply the current age. So we subtract that difference from the current age to get the age as of the target year. Okay, and then we can display the result. And actually, instead of displaying the result to the user, we have this method is called getTargetAge, so it makes sense just to return the target age. So we'll just say write output target age. So output the result. So why would we want to write the output instead of displaying it to the user? Well, because whoever's invoking this script might want to actually use that output for something. Instead of displaying it to the user, they might want to do this calculation, get the output value back, and then use it for something. So that's the difference between writing to host. The only thing that happens is as a side effect, it shows the user that string, but the caller, whoever is invoking the script, doesn't necessarily have access to that value. Writing the output gives the caller of the script access to that value. Okay, so let's try running this. I'm going to make this a little smaller so we can, I'm going to clear my screen. CLS or clear also works. Okay. So now I'm going to say get target age and hit tab. Okay. And then I need to specify the current age. So I'm going to say current, hit tab, and notice that it knows how to autocomplete that because I've declared that as a parameter. Say my current age is 50, and I want to find out how old I was as of the year 2000, and it does compute that correctly. So it knows the current year is 2021, so subtracting that from the target year gives us 21, so the difference is 21. So in other words, the target year was 21 years ago. Subtract that from my current age of 50, and it means I was 29 on this date in 2000. Okay, now does that fix the problem we had? There are a couple things that we might need to address here. So one is, what if instead of typing 50 for current age, I type ZZZ? Okay, now I still get this error that I had before when we called read host. So this is where we can improve things a little bit. When we declare the parameter, in addition to giving the name of the parameter, we can give it the type that we want that parameter to have. we want both of these to be integers. So I can just write the type in square brackets. This is called an attribute of the parameter. This particular attribute is simply the type. Both of these are expected to be integers. So now, if I type that same command, then at least it gives us a better message. It says, cannot process argument transformation on parameter current age, cannot convert to system int 32, the string was in incorrect format. So that's actually probably appropriate. It gives us the right sort of message because it's the caller is passing in something that's not right. The other thing was in our original script, we didn't have to pass the parameters at all. It would prompt for the parameters. So let's just, what happens now if we do this? Ooh, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Okay, so it makes more sense in this case. We really do want the user to have to supply these two arguments. So what we can do is we can declare them as mandatory. So we can say, I always have to look up the syntax for this, but it's parameter, and then parentheses, and then we can give properties of the parameter. Mandatory equals $true, remember, is the way of declaring the true value in PowerShell. It's like a predefined variable or constant. So we'll do the same thing. We also need the target year. So we'll say parameter mandatory equals true for the target year as well. Okay, so now we've declared that each of these parameters, so we have two parameters, current age and target year, and we've declared that both of them are mandatory and both of them are integers. So now what happens if I don't type anything? Well, now it says, it actually prompts us to supply the value for the following parameter. So current age, and now if we type ZZZ, oh, it can't recognize it as a system int 32 due to a format error. So now I have another chance to type it in as 50, say. And target year, again, if I type the wrong thing, then, oh, okay, it did allow blank. I treated it as 0. But anyway, if I type 50 as the current age and 2000 as the target year, it does what I expect. But it's flexible. I can also type them, oops, I can also invoke the script and supply them on the command line. Current age. So if I want to run it interactively, I can run it with no arguments and it'll be prompted, but I can also run it where I supply all the values on the command line, and in which case it simply does the computation and there's no user interaction involved. So this is very nice because we don't have to actually write the code to read the input from the user, but it's also more flexible because I can invoke this script from another script and some other, just like I can invoke any other PowerShell command. Essentially, by writing this script, I've defined my own command, just like the built-in PowerShell commands, and I can use that command instead of just getting information from the user. I can use that command where some other code I'm writing maybe wants to compute the target age given these two values, and now I can just pass those in and get the result back. And again, because we're writing to the output instead of to the host, I could say, well, let's say target age equals get target current age 50, target 2000, and now I've actually got the value stored in a variable. So I could do something with it. Okay, so that's a slightly more useful script than the original one we had, and even though it's more useful, it's really about the same length, and in some ways it's even simpler. Okay, so let's do a slightly different script. We're also going to work with dates here, but instead of computing the target age given your current age, we're going to ask the user for his or her birthday, and we'll tell the user how old they are right now. So that would be get current age, or just get age. So let's create a new script. This time I'll just go into Visual Studio Code. I'm just going to hit Control-N to create a new file. I'll hit Control-S to save it, and I'll give it a name. I'll just call it get current age.ps1. Again, it's a PowerShell script. So it needs to have the PS1 extension. And I'm going to close this left side panel here so we just see the code. Okay, so in this case, we're only going to have one parameter. It's going to be the birthday, the user's birthday. So again, I'm going to use a parameter block. Parameter. Actually, it's just param, I think. Param. And I'm going to declare that we need a birthday. So this is going to be mandatory again. Parameter mandatory equals true. And this time it's not going to be a integer. It's going to be a date. Date time. This is going to be the user's birthday. And given the user's birthday, we're going to compute the current age. So let's start with something that's not going to be quite correct, but just to demonstrate the basic idea. So remember, let's back up a little bit. I'm going to clear the screen here. There is this datetime object. For example, if you call get date, let's call this now. So okay, we just look at the now variable. This is what it looks like when it's formatted for output. But now has a type, and the type is date time. So what we're declaring now is that our parameter has to be a date time, and now it has members that we can look at. If instead of just formatting as a string, we decide to format it as a list, we can see different members that the datetime object has. One of those is the year member, and that's what we used before in our previous script. So we know so we have the birth year will be birthday.year, right? And we have the current year would be the current datetime year. So let's start by saying now equals get date. So this is get the current date. The current date, okay? And then we can compare the current year with the birth year, and that approximately gets us the age. So let's just start with that. Age equals birthday dot year. It'd be the other way around. It'd be the current year minus the birth year. Now year minus the birthday year, right? And then let's just output the age. We can either write output age, or we can actually just say age, either one. But I'll just put it in there to be more explicit. Another way you can write it is you can say return age. I'm not sure if you really normally would do that from a script. I'll just say write output. I think that's more conventional PowerShell thing. All right, so this isn't always going to give us the right results for reasons I'll explain, but let's just work with this. So again, we have the current date now is March 17th, 2021 as of my writing this. So what happens if I say get current age and I'm going to say that my birthday, well, first of all, notice that it has this datetime parameter. What happens if I don't supply one? It's going to prompt me for a birthday. I'm going to say that my birthday is March. So it's currently March 17th. I'm going to say my birthday is March 1st, and it's currently 2021. Just to make this easy to do the math to see whether this is correct, I'm going to say my birthday is March 1st, 2000, and it tells me that I'm 21. In this case, that answer is correct, right? Because March 17th is after March 1st. And if I was born in March 1st, 2000, and it's now March 17th, 2021, I should be 21 years old. But if I say birthday October 1st, 2000, it's also going to tell me I'm 21. So that's wrong. If I was born on October 1st, 2000, and it's now March 17th, 2021, then I'm still only 20. I won't turn 21 until October 1st of 2021. So it looks like we need to have some sort of logic to decide whether the current month and day is less than the birth month and day, right? Or actually, it's really if the birth month and day, if the current month and day is less than the birth month and day, then I really need to subtract 1 from the age. For example, if today's date is March 17th, as long as I was born on March 17th or earlier, then just subtracting the year will give me the right result. If I was born on March 17th of 2000, or March 16th, or March 15th, or February 25th, then I'm 21. But if I was born on March 18th of 2000, then I'm only 20. Okay, so we need some way of checking whether our month and year is, whether the current month and year is before our birth month and year. So let's figure out how to do that. So incidentally, there is remember we looked at that datetime object. Get date format list. There is this day of year property, but unfortunately that's not quite going to do what we want, and the reason it won't is because of leap years. So this is a bit of a sidetrack, but this seems promising at first because it seems like it's very easy to compare. It's just one number that allows us to compare instead of having to compare the month and a day. But it's not going to give quite the right result because, for example, if we say, let's say date, time, let's see now. Let's say, for example, datetime, day of year of datetime, let's see, February or March 1st of 2016. Not sure if this will work off the top of my head, but day of year. Okay. All right. So day of year of January 1st is always going to be 1. Day of year of February 1st is always going to be 32 because there are 31 days in January, so adding that to 1 gives us 32. And day of year of March 1st, excuse me, is going to give us different answers depending on whether it's a leap year like 2016 or a non-leap year like 2017. As you can see, it's 61 because in 2016 because February has 29 days, but February only has 28 days in 2017. So the day of year of March 1st is actually going to be different. So for purposes of computing our age, we really want to know whether the month and day are earlier. So using day of year is not always going to give us the right answer. Okay, so we're back to using month and day. That was just a bit of a sidetrack to consider another possibility that seemed intriguing but didn't work out. Okay, so we want to know if the current, let's see now, if the current month and day is before our birth month and day. So we can say, well, if now month, and here's where we need to do a comparison. If now month is less than, and there's a less than operator for this purpose, the birthday month. So this is going to be, this expression is what's called a Boolean expression. So for example, this is an operator, the minus sign will subtract this value from this. This is also an operator, but it doesn't subtract or add. What it does is it compares two things, and instead of giving a number, it gives a Boolean value, either true or false, to that depending on whether that comparison is true. So actually, let's back up and go to our command prompt, and let's say birthday equals date time. We'll say 2000. Let's say March 1st, 2000. Okay. And we'll say now equals date get date, right? Okay. So let's try that very command we typed above. We say now.month. Well, first of all, now.month is going to be, both of these are going to be March. Now.month, LT less than birthday.month. And what does this return? It returns false because they're the same. So something that's equal is not less than. But anyway, so if the current month actually was less than the birthday month, then it would be, this expression would be true. So how can we use this? We can use it to do some action only if this condition is true. And to do that, we say if, and then inside parentheses we put our conditional expression. So this is any expression that gives us a Boolean, a true or false value. So, and then we put curly braces. After the closed parenthesis, we put curly braces. Now everything inside of here executes only if the expression inside the if is true. Okay? So in other words, if the current month is less than the birth month, well, if the current month is less than the birth month, then we know that it's not yet the user's birthday. So we can say it's not yet the user's birthday, so subtract 1 from the age. And we can say, we can do that two ways. We can say age equals age minus 1, or we can, a shorthand of that is age minus equals 1. Okay, so that handles one case. What if the month is equal? So for example, here we said the March 1st, 2000, for example, and we're comparing that with March 17th of 2021. Well, here the month March 1st does come before March 17th. So in that case, we need to compare. We need to handle that case as well. So we can say else if now month is equal to birthday month, and now day is less than birthday day. So here it's not yet the user's birthday because it's an earlier month. So we subtract 1. Here it's not the user's birthday because it's the same month, earlier day, but we handle it the same way. And then finally we output the age. And if we wanted to, so we can have, how does this work? So if this expression is true, then we execute the stuff inside this block, and then we skip over any else if or else that follow it. If this expression is not true, then we fall through down to here, and then we consider this. We have an else if. So now we evaluate this condition. And if this condition is true, then we evaluate this, and by the way, if this is true, then we don't do any of this, right? So we go here, we execute this, and then we drop down to here. If this is not true, then we consider this possibility. And then if that's true, we execute this code. And if that's not true, then we fall through to the else. The else would be like, if none of the above were true, then we do this. So it kind of reads a bit like you'd expect. If this is true, then this. Otherwise, if this is true, then this. Otherwise, do this. Kind of like you'd read it in English. And in code, essentially only one of these blocks of code is going to execute. All right, at most one. Now we can leave out the else if we want. In this case, we don't really need the else. It's just there. I just put it there to complete this, to show you the form of this kind of thing. But in this case, there's nothing to do in the else case. So if it's an earlier month, then we subtract 1 from the age. If it's the same month and earlier day, we subtract 1 from the age. And there's nothing to do if in the remaining case, so we don't have an else block. All right, so let's try this. And we'll say get current age. And I'm going to go ahead and type in the age. And actually, I can say, or my birthday. And I say my birthday is February 1 of 2000. Okay, and February 1 is before March 17th, which is the current date, and so as expected, I'm 21. So let's try. So this is one where neither this expression, it's not an earlier month, and it's also not the same month, so neither of these is going to apply. So let's try get current age, and this time instead of February 1st, I'm going to say March 1st of 2000. So now it's the same month. But again, March 1st is before March 17th. So it's still 21. I'm still 21. And this makes sense because here's a little bit more complicated Boolean expression. So this part was true, but this part was false. So in order for this whole thing to be true, both this first half and the second half have to be true. I can make this a little bit more clear maybe by putting parentheses around these two parts. All right, so this is the left hand. Okay, so this is the left hand part of the and this is the right hand part of the and. Each of these is itself a Boolean expression, right? So this is the month, the current month is less than, or the current month is equal to the birthday month. And this is the current day is less than the birthday. So each of those is itself a Boolean expression that returns true or false. And then those two Boolean expressions can be combined with an and operator. This takes two Boolean expressions and it gives the result that's true only if both of those were true. So if both of these were true, then this whole expression is true, and that's when we'll subtract 1 from the age. Well, it's true that March is equal to March, but it's not true that 1 is less than 17. So therefore, we did not subtract 1 from the age. So let's try March 18th. Okay, so the current day is 17. 17 is less than the birthday, 18. So now I'm actually 20. So and that makes sense because the current date is less than my birthday of March 18th. So it's not yet my birthday. So therefore, I'm only 20, even though it's 2021 and I was born in 2000. Okay, and then of course there's the possibility, what if it's on my birthday? We should make sure that works out correctly. On my birthday, we're fine because we only subtract 1 if the current day is less than, not if it's less than or equal to, if it's less than my birthday. Okay, and then the remaining case is some other month, like October. And So this is, my birthday is October, so if it's only March, it's not my birthday yet. So it makes sense that I'm only 20. Okay, so we have a script that does the right thing. And I think that's a good stopping point, or not a good stopping point. We've learned a little bit about conditional expressions. Okay, so the next step I'd like to show you is, what if we think all this logic here for these conditional expressions is a little complicated, and maybe I want to do this more than once in other places. How can we make this logic, how can we package it up so we can use it in more than one place? And also just make it maybe a little clearer what it does. Well, one way is we can give it a name, and we can make it a function. So I'm going to declare a function up here. A function is almost like a little script within our script that you can call. So I'm going to use the function keyword, and I'm going to declare a function, and I'm going to call it, I'm going to use it to compare whether one date is less than another date. A date, in this case, not being a whole date time, but just being a month and a day. So I'm going to call it test less date. Okay, and I'm going to give this parameters as well. And you can do that using a param block like we did for the whole script. But there's a simpler way when it comes to a function, is just to list the variables inside parentheses, list the parameters as variables inside parentheses. Now this is going to have we need 4 values. We need to know, essentially we have 2 dates, and each of those is a month and a day. So we're just going to have, we'll just call it M1 and D1 for the first date, and M2 and D2 for the second date. And I'll put in a little comment at the beginning. I'll say, determine whether the first month day, M1, D1, is less than the second month day, M2, D2. Okay, so this function is going to take these 2 months and days, and it's going to return either a true value or a false value. So essentially we can copy this logic we put down here. In fact, I'm going to literally copy and paste this. So instead of saying now month, we're asking whether the M1, the first month, is less than the second month. If the first month is less than the second month, then the function is going to return true. Okay, because if the first month, the month is more significant than the day. So if the first month is less than the second month, then the first date is less than the second date. So that's the purpose of the function, is to check whether the first date is less than the second. And the other possibility where we return true is if the months are equal. Again, this is the same thing we did before, except I'm just giving them slightly different names. So if M1 is equal to M2, and the D1 is less than D2. And again, that's going to give us true. I'm going to say month is less. And then in all other cases, we're going to return false. Okay. And I could write return here, or I could write write output here, and I'm just going to leave it as like this. Okay. So now we've defined a function. So normally when the script runs, right, it's going to run from the top to bottom, but when it hits the function, it's not going to execute the code inside the function. All this is doing is defining the function. It doesn't actually execute until we invoke it. Then we get down into this code. This code exists outside the function, so the first step we're going to actually run in our script is this one, where we assign get date to now. And then we compute the age, our first guess of the age. This is assuming that it's on or after the user birthday. And then instead of this down here, we're gonna write a simpler if statement. We're gonna say if, and then inside of our if statement, we're gonna call our function. We're gonna invoke our function. We'll say test less date, and then we give the parameters that we came up with. So there's the first parameter. So we want to know if the current day is before the birthday, right? So if the current month and day is before the birth month and day, then we need to subtract 1 from the age. So in fact, I'll put that as the comment. If the current month day is before the birth month day, then subtract 1 from the age. Okay, so that tells us what we need to know. Now month, now day, birthday, month, birthday, day. So those are the parameters. So if all that is true, so we invoke the function. This function is going to return either true or false. If the current month and day is less than the birth month and day, then this function is going to return true, and so we'll enter the body of the if block, and in which case we'll subtract 1 from the age. And now this stuff is not needed, and in theory this should all work. So let's try it. Let's do the same command we did for the first one up above. Birthday 2/1 of 2000 is 21. 3/1 of 2000. Okay, we have a problem here. Cannot compare 17 to. Looks like I made a mistake somewhere here. Well, just to make things a little bit more clear. So when declaring parameters of functions, you don't actually have to declare the types. But in this case, I'm expecting them all to be integers. I'm not sure where that error message came from, what that error message means, but I suspect somewhere I made a mistake. And maybe one of these is not an integer. So I'm going to declare these types of these variables so that if somehow I passed in the wrong thing, it'll tell us. So let's try this again. Birthday dot, oh, I passed in date instead of day. That helped us. So notice that putting in the type gave us exactly what went wrong, because I passed in date instead of day. That meant D2 here was a date instead of just a, the date was actually a string. Right? The date looked like something like that. I just wanted the day. All right, so sometimes you don't get things right the first time. So let's try get current age of March, assuming it's March 1st. So this is the same day, but my birthday is March 1st, so it is past my birthday now. It's March 17th now. March 17th should be equal to my birthday. March 18th means that the current date is before my birthday, so I should only be 20. And of course, if it's April or later, then I'm still only 20. So this did the right thing. So go back up here, and let's review a little bit. We defined a function. This is sort of like a little script within a script. The function is called test less date. By the way, why did I use the word test? PowerShell has some conventions for how to name things. It's very important to name things in a way that helps you remember them and that makes sense when you read them. And PowerShell has certain conventions. Like I said, commands always have the form, there's a verb, hyphen, and then some noun phrase. And there's also certain verbs that PowerShell uses. And I looked up, if you search for PowerShell verbs on Google or Bing or what have you, you could find this page, and it actually lists different verbs and what they mean and when to use them, and other things you might think of that you should maybe not use. So PowerShell tries to be very consistent so that it's easier to remember things. So test is one that typically returns a Boolean value and is used to test or evaluate whether something is true. So for example, an example of a function that is sort of built into PowerShell is test path. If I look in the files in the current directory and I say test path first script.ps1, it'll say true. But if I test path no such file.ps1, it will say false. Okay. Anyway, so we defined a function, we gave it a name that hopefully makes sense. We declared parameters. Initially, I didn't declare the types of the parameters. You don't really have to, but to debug something, I found it more helpful. So the types that inside the square brackets tell us what parameters are expected for this function. So when you call this function, it's going to make sure that whatever you pass it can be converted to that type, or either is of that type or can be converted to that type. And then we use conditional statements. So if the first month is less than the second month, then we know that the first date is less. If this is, and then we are done. We don't execute the else if or the else, because only one of these blocks is going to execute. If this is not true, then we're going to follow through and evaluate this possibility. This is a more complex Boolean expression. It has two parts. So we evaluate the left part. Is the first month equal to the second month? And if that's true, then we evaluate the second part. Is this first day less than the second day? And if both of these are true, then the and expression is true. And if all that is true, then it means the month is equal and the day is less, so we're going to return true from this function. And if neither the if nor the else if evaluates to true, then we're going to fall through to the else. And by the way, we could have other else ifs. We can have as many else ifs as you want. Else if whatever. Okay, but if none of the else ifs are true, then we're going to fall through to the else. And in this case, what that means is we're going to return false from this function. So this function is always going to return either true or false, because we're always going to evaluate one of these three blocks of code. First one if the if is true, second one if the else if is true, and the last one if neither of these possibilities is true. Okay, so when the script runs, the parameter simply is declaring to PowerShell that the caller is expected to pass this parameter in. The function is simply declaring or defining this function. It doesn't actually execute right away. It only executes when you use it. Then we get to the first actual statement of the script. We get the date, assign it to a variable. We calculate the age just by subtracting the birthday year from the birth year from the current year. And then we use our handy dandy function to determine if it's not yet the user's birthday in the current year, in which case we have to subtract 1 from the age, and then finally we return the result as the output of the script. Okay, so there's a lot you can do with if statements and else if statements, and there's a lot you can do with functions. So I encourage you to play around with those a bit. Maybe come up with some of your own ideas of things you might write, and hopefully I'll see you next time. All right, thank you.